I'm Josh with Waupaca Community Media with our weekly update. Aaron Jensen from the city of Waupaca, Ron Sari from the Waupaca School District. Hello.
Hi.
And the first thing we're going to talk about, it's going to be a busy weekend in Waupaca, a number of things going on both this weekend and in the short term here. And the first thing we want to recognize is the 20th anniversary of 9/11 is coming up, and the Waupaca Area Public Library has a display set up to commemorate that.
Yeah, so they have a poster display, just kind of commemorating, obviously, what happened a lot of years ago now, back in 2001. So I would just encourage people to come out, check it out, get into the library. There's actually some right in the lobby here between City Hall and that. And that's not the only 9/11 thing happening this weekend. So the library is doing a great job making sure we remember what happened on that day, but also the Battle of the Badges is kind of intentionally scheduled their fundraiser for 9/11. And they'll be doing some things out there at Swan Park at 5 o'clock on Saturday. The game starts, but they'll have some tributes to the date as well. So I believe the weather looks nice. I haven't really looked, but I would encourage everyone to get out there. That's a fundraiser event for both our police department and fire department. If I'm not mistaken, might get some flack for this. I believe the fire department is reigning champs of that and may have some bragging rights. And I know that our police department, one of their best ball players is not going to be there. So we'll see what happens. They're kind of going back and forth about it last I heard them talk. So it'll be a fun event and for a good cause.
And then the other big event going on in the community this weekend is Oktoberfest.
Yeah, so that is an event that's put on by the Waupaca Rotary Club, and it's a great fundraiser. The Rotary Club gives to a ton of different things in the community, supports a ton of different great initiatives. One of the larger fundraisers they do. So that will be Friday night at the rec center. That's something that's usually held in the direct downtown area, but because of Main Street, again, shifting over to the rec center parking lot in a tent outside, and we encourage everyone to come to that. So Friday evening, we hope to see as many people there as possible.
We're going to shift over to Ron. We're going to talk COVID a little bit. And there was a special school board meeting Tuesday evening with one specific item on the agenda, and that was to update the school board on the masking criteria and requirements. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the meeting lasted about 45 minutes, Josh, and that one topic, it was the whole focus. Basically, we established that we have a benchmark on August 10th when we had our August board meeting, and the medical team decided that we're going mask optional. That day, we had a 9.8 confirmed positive in the county as a 7-day average. So that's kind of our benchmark. If we can get that down, that's a positive piece. And the other data point would be what's happening within our school district cohort of students and staff. Last week, we've had as high as 6 positives in our cohort. Yesterday, we had 0 positives in our cohort, but it's my understanding we may have at least a couple added today in our cohort. So we keep track of both of those data points very closely along with others, but those are the 2 main big ones. And it's hard, we shared last night, it's so hard for us because every day the data changes. So on Wednesday of last week, we could have had 2 positives in that 7-day average or probable. The next day it could be 4. The next day it could be 3. The next day on that same day, it could change to 6. So the DHS has this column it's called preliminary data. And in that column, it's supposed to be a 2-week column before it all gets confirmed. But even 3 weeks plus after that, we're still seeing numbers change as time goes on. And that's really hard for us to know what's actually happening, when you have that 2-week lag. And then on top of that, there's other days where it's still changing past the 2 weeks. So that's a challenge that we have. We're working through that. But we have that 9.8 as the benchmark. And if we can get our county numbers down, and then if we can keep our cohort down, we're hopeful we can move to mass optional at some point soon.
And talking about some of the challenges with the data. I'm glad you explained that to help families understand why you're making the decisions you're making and what you face in making those decisions, both, because there's a lot of people with strong opinions in both directions. And I know you keep a close eye on that data, and yeah, a lot of challenges with it. Something else we want to talk about, some reminders on how quarantining needs to work. Who needs to quarantine, who doesn't need to quarantine?
Yeah, so if a individual is a close contact to somebody who is a confirmed positive, if they're non-vaccinated and they don't have symptoms, they're going to have to quarantine and get tested. But if they are vaccinated and they don't have symptoms, they can go on their way and monitor themselves, but they don't have to quarantine. And that's a pretty big positive factor for those individuals who are vaccinated. The other thing I wanted to mention is that those PCR tests that we advertised about and were told by the company that it would be within, the results get back to us and the individual who got tested within 24 to 48 hours. And we're not getting them back anywhere near that. And that's very disappointing. And I feel terrible about it because we told our community that they'd get back between 24 and 48 hours. But I guess what the problem is, the state has taken that part over and it isn't in the vendor's hands anymore. And so that's part of it with the state getting involved. And so we're just hoping that gets ironed out and we do get them back within, I would expect within 12 hours, really. I had symptoms a while back and I had to go get tested and my test results came back less than 12 hours. In the middle of the night, they came back negative. So, but other than that, this is today is day 5 of school for this year. And we've had a great start. Some of our teachers came to the different principals and said, despite the situation we're in, with COVID and everything, it was one of the best starts that they remember. And I know my tech director, he said, from his perspective, a technology-wise perspective, that it's been one of the best starts that he's ever had too, with things working correctly like they're supposed to work. And so we got a lot of positives going on. It's nice to see the kids back excited, interacting with each other. And we're just pleased that we're face-to-face 5 days a week right now. And we hope we can continue to do that and that our data goes trending down in the right direction for us.
Awesome. And then last thing we want to touch on, it's budget process time for the city government. And at the city council meeting, the council got a chance to learn more about the transit budget, which has to do with Waupaca Taxi and the TIF districts. And what I heard, it sounded like some good news on both of them.
Yeah, it really is. The transit budget is good news because for those who don't know, we're talking Waupaca Taxi now. And that is heavily subsidized by state money. And not only that, but with all the federal money that's coming in light of some of the programs, we give $10,000 to that as a city to help subsidize that each year. It very well may be covered this year with some of those opportunities coming through. So that was the message last night. That's a real positive for this year's budget. And then also the TIF districts. We've had a number of TIF districts over the last 20 plus years, and we're getting to the point where we're seriously considering, and staff will be recommending, closing a couple out this fall. One of them is one of our bigger value TIF districts, which will be a positive thing for the valuation in the city, get us kind of under a threshold of equalized value, which is when TIF districts are over 12% of our equalized value, it limits us in some ways. And we're looking at bringing that under 12% to open up some options for development. So we're excited about that. We still have to go to the joint review board for some other things, but from a closing standpoint, that's done by city council, and we're looking forward to those conversations and the impacts that'll have. So
awesome. Well, Ron, Aaron, appreciate the updates. Look like it's going to be a busy weekend, and we'll talk again next week.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.